So, after covering two theories that seemingly no one has talked about, I'm going right into a topic that almost everybody has talked about. The UA traitor, and its potentially most likely suspect, Denki Kaminari. So, what could I offer to this age-old theory that so many people have talked about? Well, I want to provide an alternative way of thinking based on the evidence collected by not just myself, but Twitter users Papa Shirogane and I'm so sorry. So shoutouts to them for making me rethink this whole scenario. We're going to go bit by bit on why Kaminari would be the perfect traitor character for My Hero Academia. Now, looking at all the members of Class 1A, certain characters get more screen time and development than others. So I'm going to categorize them into a couple of groups. First are the main characters, the ones that we have seen the most growth and development from in regards to being a hero. We can rule out all of these characters right away, because while yes, anything is possible, these are pretty much the poster children of MHA. And making them suddenly evil would be more of an ass pull than a surprising twist. Especially Uraraka. I have no idea why some people think that. Like, the villains could barely afford sushi before the PLF was formed, and you think that they could fund her family for intel? On the opposite side of the scale, we have the minor characters. These guys simply don't have enough weight to their characters to warrant being a good candidate to be the traitor. Aoyama is kind of an exception to this since he's gotten more screen time recently, but I'm still gonna put him here. Let's think about it from a storytelling perspective. You're watching a murder mystery, and the true culprit ends up being a character you saw 2 minutes of at the beginning of the story who had like 3 lines. You wouldn't care, because there is no investment in that character. The same applies to someone like Hagakure, as some people have said before. I like Hagakure, she's a cute character, but that's all she is. In the grand scheme of the audience, how many people do you think would actually care after over 300 chapters of mystery and discussion? It's the character who solely exists to be a lighthearted joke. Now, that leaves us with the side characters, the most likely suspects. So let's rule out some people. Yaoyorozu has had several episodes dedicated to working on her self-confidence as a hero, and was the key player in taking Gigantomachia down. She also cried at the death of Midnight, so I don't think it's her. Speaking of which, Mina is also exempt from this role for a lot of the same reasons as Momo. Standing up for people in need and being a beacon of hope for people is a core part of her character, and her being the traitor would betray that development, and not in a good way. It would feel more like regression than progression, if you get what I'm saying. Tokoyami saved Hawk's life after he trained him, Tsuyu has consistently been a team player, Jiro had an entire musical number about her being a hero people can rely on, and frankly, Mideta is too much of a joke character to the point where if it was him, I don't think a single person would be happy. That only leaves us with Kaminari, the perfect sweet spot between a character we've seen enough of to have an emotional attachment to, while also being someone we don't know much about, aside from the small scene here and there. Going into the manga side of the story here, specifically regarding the origin of Toga, we learn that the quirk you are born with will influence your personality. Toga's blood-sucking quirk made her naturally attracted to the concept of blood. Shigaraki had a growing itch to destroy, even as a little kid, regardless if it was subconscious at first. You get the point. So, how does this relate to Kaminari? Well, instead of going with the traditional path of a traitor character and having them reveal themselves as a liar with the whole "haha, I fooled you all along" thing, I think there could be a much cooler way of going about it that could explain everything. So what's Kaminari's quirk? It's electricity. And electricity has a positive and a negative charge that attract towards each other to work in tandem. So what if they took this concept and implemented it into Kaminari's mental state, having a positive and a negative side? In other words, a split personality. The perfect setup for a traitor character, someone who acts on both sides of the moral scale and at the same time can believably play both of their roles to a T because they themselves get lost in it. For my Attack on Titan fans that may be watching, If you think of this in the context of that character, everything I say after this point will make a lot of sense. This, in my opinion, would be the best way to pull off a traitor character, because Kaminari wouldn't just suddenly hate everyone and become evil. There would be that strong emotional pull, because he genuinely got attached to his fellow classmates. And now that his identity is exposed, he can never come back to them again. That sympathetic quality to Kaminari's character, and the fact that he has fought on the side of good on multiple occasions, is why so many people disregard him immediately. But that's because we're only seeing one side of him, the positive side. When he becomes aware of what he is as a villain, what is that Kaminari like? We can actually see an example of what that could look like in this official illustration from Horikoshi. We can see the positive and negative idea on full display. If you split his face, you get the positive and fun himbo that we all love, and a wicked grin full of malice and negativity.
But Kaminari would be too dumb for this! That's literally his weakness!
I hear you cry. Well, what if the dumbness was an act? I want to bring your attention to the biggest scene that convinced me of this possibility. In Chapter 16, we learn the fundamentals of Kaminari's quirk. If he exceeds his limit, which at this point in the story is 1.3 million volts, his brain will fry, and he will go into his dum-dum mode. Skip ahead to Chapter 29, and we see Kaminari pull off this same move again in the cavalry battle, even specifying it is the same 1.3 million volts. He uses the move, and he's fine. After he uses the move, we get this panel of Kaminari looking really nervous, like he just realized he didn't do his usual shtick. Hell, even the text of Tokoyami saying he is the real problem could have a deeper meaning if all of this comes to pass. On top of that, we know that he didn't just get better, because in the same arc just a few chapters later, he does this same move against Shiozaki and he gets the dumb effect. Now, people can point out that, oh, but look here, he gets the effect gradually over time in the cavalry battle. Every single other time we have seen this weakness, Horikoshi draws Kaminari with the same distinct Saitama-looking face. And also every time it's happened, it's been instantaneous. Considering he used this attack on over 10 people, he shouldn't even be able to speak, let alone act this way. This, to me, looks like he slipped up. And this would be the perfect time to do it as well, because in the context of the scene, nobody would be paying attention to Kaminari amidst the chaos, because everyone, including the audience, is focused on the battle itself, rather than anyone in particular. Considering this is so early on in the story, it would make sense that a hint towards the traitor would be placed in this time frame. Speaking of which, the whole reason this traitor theory was started was due to two incidents in the manga related to the League of Villains. The first was the attack on the USJ, where Kirogiri and Shigaraki received intel that All Might and the students of Class 1A would be going to the USJ on that day. The reason that the heroes couldn't contact anyone was because someone was blocking communication with an electric quirk, and Momo and Jiro, who fought with Kaminari by the way, assumed that it was the villain they were fighting with, because why would they assume their friend if there was someone right in front of them? In fact, looking at the conversation as a whole, Kaminari was super weird during the entire thing. I think this is his split personality on full display, but Jiro just chalked it up to him being an idiot. Let's review this scene in the idea that he's trying to deceive people. We start with him being scared of the villains and wondering, oh, what are they doing here? Playing it up to keep his cover. When Jiro asks him to take them out with his quirk, he hesitates. And he does give them a legitimate reason why he can't control his quirk. I don't think he's lying about that. But then he switches the conversation entirely and starts talking about how his receiver is jammed, which if we apply our context, is a total lie. But after Jiro forces him into the fight, which I'm sure he wasn't expecting, his attitude changes on a dime. Suddenly he's super confident in his ability and is telling them that he's got it covered, switching to his hero persona. He even goes back on his word and says that he's super strong and he had nothing to worry about. Normally, this scene could be played for goofs, but with this context of him switching between two roles, I think it recontextualizes everything. Another tiny thing that feels super weird to me is how Kaminari asks for a weapon under his breath. This isn't a fan translation either. This is the official Viz Media translation, and he wants a weapon fully knowing what his quirk can do? Seems odd to me. Now, could I be looking way too deep into this? Totally. But hey, that's what theories are about, right? Moving on, we have the second instance of the League receiving intel of a classified location. The Vanguard Action Squad's attack during the Forest Training Arc. We don't have many indications of how they found out about this either. All they say is that our shadowy orchestrator has planned everything, which we can assume is All for One. I'll get back to him later, but for now, I'm going to point out another small detail. So, just before the attack happens, we get 2 panels of the students sleeping, one for the boys, one for the girls. We see in the bottom panel that the empty sleeping bag is occupied by Hagakure due to the floating blanket and her shadow. But on the boys' side, someone has climbed out of bed, just as the League arrives. How very intriguing. These are the characters that we don't see sleeping, but I already discussed why I don't think it's anyone other than Kaminari. Especially out of this lot. He's the only one that could have contacted the League using his quirk without getting caught, because he would just have to get out of hearing range to contact them. Someone like Kirishima would have to walk right up to them, which we see isn't the case in the shot of the Vanguard. Now, the only contradiction to this is that the League has put Kaminari in danger multiple times. Like, Compress nearly killed him with a f***ing boulder. They did not give 2 shits what happened to that kid. This proposes an interesting question of where Kaminari's allegiance lies. I feel like Kaminari isn't working for the League of Villains, but rather under All for One. We've seen how many contingency plans that man has, and we know he doesn't tell the League everything. So going off my last point of the Vanguard's plan being orchestrated by All for One, perhaps Kaminari is acting as an anonymous client, providing information for All for One to pass on to the League. But why wouldn't All for One tell the League? Wouldn't he want to avoid Kaminari from getting killed? I think for the sake of Kaminari's cover, and to make sure the League doesn't screw up, he's keeping the League in the dark. And being aware of Kaminari's split personality, he knows he'll just fall in line to make himself in the dark, if that makes sense. All for One is a very charismatic man. He knows how to sweeten the deal to get people on his side. We've seen him lead an entire society before. So that just begs the question, what is Kaminari's goal? Now, this is only a one-off line, but it still stuck out to me enough to mention. It gives me a pretty good idea of what kind of villain Kaminari would be. When Stain first emerged, he did admit to him being pretty cool, which is something a lot of heroes would be caught dead saying. And once again, for the 3rd time now, he's sweating nervously. I think Kaminari would follow the ideology of weeding out fake heroes. In the beginning of the series, I remember him distinctly saying Bakugo had a pretty insufferable personality. But over time, he's one of the first people to truly respect him and see how much he's grown into the person he is. Maybe he came to UA expecting to find the most manufactured and package-dealt heroes there are, but instead, he learned to truly see how each one of them truly sticks to their convictions. But at this point, he's already committed himself to the role for far too long, and he has to stick with it. His positive and negative sides are conflicting constantly. On a side note, regarding the Redestro thing, I do think it's just him doing a pose for his move, but let's go tinfoil hat mode for a little bit and say this is an indication that he also believes in the Liberation Army's ideals, which was a very public book, by the way, so he could have read it at any time. What if the reason he's doing it with the wrong hand is because that's his split personality conflicting with his true thoughts? Yeah, probably not, but it's fun to think about. Now, as of writing this script, that bonk with the horny rock from chapter 279 leading to his lap pillow from 280 is the last time we've seen Kaminari. Despite seeing most of Class 1A in the hospital with the main trio, even characters like Sero and Sato, we don't see Kaminari anywhere. I wonder if this head injury is gonna lead to anything regarding his potential personality disorder. That rock could have sent his mind all out of whack, so he might be in a hospital bed for all we know. This could be the segue we've been waiting for. But who knows really? With All for One back in the game and all these criminals on the loose, anything is possible. Now, I know not everything I said today is foolproof for Kaminari being the traitor, but I think out of all of the characters in the series who could be an intriguing, shocking, emotionally engaging, and overall the best candidate for a traitor character, Kaminari checks all those boxes for me. Just going off the script here a little bit, I think Kaminari has so much potential to be more than what he is right now. People already like him, including myself. He has one of the strongest designs out of his class, hell, the entire cast of heroes even. But we just don't see enough of him. And adding this extra layer, with his quirk having two different sides to it, to explain how there would be a traitor, even though all of the kids we've seen in Class 1A seem like they would never do something like this, would be really cool. Because it's something not a lot of people would think about. And with this whole personality quirk influx thing, I think this would really highlight it. Hell, it could even tie into quirk singularity, how the quirks aren't just damaging people physically as they go on. The more intense the quirks get, the more intensive they are on the mind as well, mentally damaging them. It's a really cool thing to think about, and I really hope it happens. But if it doesn't, and there's really no traitor, then, you know, that's fine too. It'd just be kind of a bummer. But I think out of all the candidates, I'll say it again, I'll die on this hill if I have to, Kaminari would be awesome as the traitor. Anyway, that's it from me. Make sure to check out the other two videos on this channel. Just seeing the small upcreep of views and the few comments that there are makes me really happy. I just really want to nerd out about my hero, and this is my outlet to do it. So seeing that more and more people are getting engaged in my theories and ideas makes me really happy. Anyway, I'm done rambling. This video was supposed to end a while ago. See you guys later. But Twitter users oh my god, whoa, I knew I was gonna screw that up. But Twitter users Papa Shirogane, oh my god, I know the name because of Naoto from Persona, come on.